Tonight we are looking at 3 horrifying caving stories that went horribly wrong. In Spain, a passage stops breathing with 2 cavers already inside it. In France, a re-rigged rope ends 30 centimeters above the ledge. In Austria, the ice floor goes hollow an hour from daylight. Each story starts with confidence and ends in chaos. As always, viewer discretion is advised. On May 9th, 2026, Rubén Salas walked into Ojo Guareña, the longest cave system in Spain. More than 100 kilometers of passage threading the limestone under the Burgos meadows. The entrance breathes cold air all summer. Every caver in Castile knows that sound. He was surveying with 2 clubmates on a 6-hour plan, down the old trade route, into a side maze nobody had mapped since the 80s, and out by supper. Rubén was 39 years old, a cave surveyor from Burgos who spent every weekend underground and had logged 900 trips in 16 years, the one who drew the club's maps by hand, and the one who never let a team split up. His habit was the wet finger. At every junction he licked a knuckle and held it up, because a passage that has stopped breathing, he told his students, has stopped being a passage. The old maze was a familiar grid of crawls, 3 hours of easy survey work. What he didn't know, a roof collapse the previous winter had sealed one loop of it, and the air inside had been going stale ever since. Here is what you need to understand about bad air underground. It does not smell, and it does not warn. In a sealed pocket, carbon dioxide pools like water in a bowl, heavier than air, invisible, patient. And the first thing it takes is your judgment, not your breath. A caver trusts his lungs to tell him. The cave only tells the flame. The trip in ran easy. 3 lamps in the dust, boots scuffing dry clay, the tape measure clicking out along the old survey stations. Nothing went wrong on the way in because the way in still breathed. They reached the unmapped loop at 2 o'clock, on schedule, 2 hours from the entrance. What they didn't know, past the 4th station, the draft they had followed all morning simply stopped. At the 4th station, that is when the habit earned its keep, because Rubén licked his knuckle, held it up, and felt nothing at all on either side of it. Dead air, at 3 o'clock, 1 hour into the maze. And his lamp flame, when he crouched to it, sat lower and yellower than it had all day. What his clubmates knew, 20 meters deeper in the loop, nothing. They were still crawling forward, still talking, still laughing at something one of them had said. He crouched with the flame at floor level and watched it shorten. Bad air sits low. It had been filling that loop since winter, and they had crawled down into the deep end of it. Panic lives in a passage that has stopped breathing. He shouted their names. The answer came back slow. 2 men were trapped. The words came out wrong, because this is the arithmetic of a sealed pocket, and the clock on it runs in minutes. At 4% carbon dioxide, a caver breathes hard and thinks he is only tired. 10 minutes at 8% is the outside edge of it. At 8%, he stops making decisions. And 20 meters of crawl is a very long way to be carried by one man. Watch a surveyor do the hardest right things in dead air. First, he did not crawl in after them. 1 unconscious caver must not become 3. He backed out to the last breathing junction and shouted from there, counting the seconds between answers. Second, he went in on his belly with his lamp held low as a gauge, 1 arm's length at a time, watching the flame shrink and backing off whenever it did. Put yourself in that crawl for 1 minute of it. Air that feels like a warm room and lies about it. A flame going soft in front of your face, and 2 friends somewhere ahead who have stopped answering properly. He found the first one sitting up against the wall, arguing gently with nobody. He dragged him out by the harness, backwards, in 4 pulls, resting his own face in the good air between each one. The second was further, face down and heavy, 8 meters past the station. Rubén hauled him to the breathing junction in 3 stages across 11 minutes, and the flame came back up to full height as they crossed the last of it. Both men came back within 10 minutes of reaching moving air, confused and furious and alive. The 3 of them walked out of Ojo Guareña at dusk under their own power, 4 hours after the survey began, and nobody said much on the drive down to Sotoscueva. The Federation's report ruled it a carbon dioxide pocket behind a winter collapse. 2 cavers unconscious, 2 cavers rescued, 11 minutes from the first dropped answer to moving air, and nobody died. Both men recovered fully within 2 days. One line from that report is taught to every Burgos club member in their first season. The flame reads the air before the lungs do. The longest cave system in Spain still breathes cold through its entrance all summer, still holds one sealed loop that nobody surveys. A gas meter hangs at the club store today, signed out like a rope on every trip over 2 hours, and the unmapped loop is drawn on Ruben's maps now, hatched, with 2 words beside it. A passage that has stopped breathing has stopped being a passage, he still tells his students. So what saved 2 men in the dark? A wet knuckle, a flame held low, and the discipline to go backwards when everything in you says forward. On June 13, 2026, Mathieu 4 clipped in at the head of the 4th pitch in the Gouffre Jean-Bernard, for decades the deepest cave in France. 1,600 meters of shaft and meltwater under the Alps above Samoan. Snow still lay on the plateau. The shaft below him ran cold. He was descending with a team of 4 on a 12-hour push, down the vertical series, a bivouac at -600, and back up the next day. Mathieu was 34 years old, a vertical caver from Annecy who had rigged pitches for 11 years and logged 400 descents, the one his club sent ahead when a shaft needed re-rigging, and the one who wrote the rigging topo everyone else copied. His habit was the tail knot. He tied a stopper into the bare end of every rope he ever hung, because a rope, he told his students, only tells you it is too short at the moment you cannot climb back up it. The 4th pitch was familiar, 90 meters of clean free hang. What he didn't know, the previous team had re-rigged it 2 weeks earlier off a higher anchor, and the same rope now finished 30 centimeters above the ledge. The descent ran cold and clean, the clang of a carabiner against the anchor plate, boots scraping off the lip, the shaft opening black beneath, meltwater hissing down the far wall. Nothing went wrong on the way down because the way down asked nothing of the rope's last meter. He passed the rebelay at -40 at 9 in the evening, on schedule. What he didn't know, below him, the rope ended in air. At 70 meters down, that is, when the descent failed him, because Mathieu ran his hand along the rope as he always did and felt for the stopper knot that should have sat above the ledge. It was there. It was simply in the wrong place. Here is what you need to understand about a re-rigged pitch. The rope does not change, but the geometry does. Move the anchor 2 meters up the wall to dodge a waterfall, and the far end of that rope moves 2 meters too, off the ledge it used to touch, into the dark above it. A caver descends the pitch he remembers. The cave only honors the rope that is hanging. What the team above knew, watching his light shrink, nothing at all. The pitch looked exactly as the topo drew it. He stopped his descender 10 meters above the ledge at 20 past 9 and hung there in the dark, turning slowly on the rope. Above him, the shaft went up 90 meters to a team who could not see him. Below him, it went down into water noise and nothing else. He gave himself 2 minutes to decide and used 90 seconds of it. Panic lives at the end of a rope. The knot was below his feet. His arms were already spent. The ledge was too far. He was trapped in mid-air. Because this is the arithmetic of a short rope. He could change over and climb 90 meters back to the top, and that costs an hour of arm strength he had already spent on the way down. Or he could pass the knot and drop the last 30 centimeters onto a wet, sloping ledge in the dark. He had 10 minutes of grip left to choose in. He chose the ledge. It was the choice his own topo recommended, and on the rigging he remembered it was the right one. The slope was wet. His boots found it, slid with a long scrape of rubber on limestone,
and the ledge handed him straight back to the shaft. Somewhere far below, a dislodged stone cracked off the wall twice before the sound stopped. Watch a team do the hardest right things above a fallen friend. First, nobody followed him down. The rigging had already proved what it could do, and a second caver on that rope makes 2 casualties, not 1 rescue. Second, one of them climbed 90 meters back to the surface alone, in the dark, and carried the exact words a cave rescue needs. 4th pitch, 90 meters, 1 caver fallen, re-rigged anchor. The Haute-Savoie teams were on the plateau in 4 hours and on the pitch head in 7, hauling a stretcher up a shaft that runs with meltwater all summer. Matthew 4 died on the ledge at the foot of the 4th pitch, 30 centimeters below a stopper knot he had tied himself, on a rigging that had been correct for 11 years and wrong for 2 weeks. The inquest ruled the death a fall from a re-rigged pitch on trusted memory. The report recorded 90 meters of rope, 30 centimeters of shortfall, 7 hours to reach him, and 1 recommendation the French clubs adopted that winter. Every re-rig is dated at the pitch head on a tag the next caver has to touch. The deepest cave in France still takes its meltwater down the same shafts, still changes its own geometry every season.
Matthew's rigging topo is still the one the clubs copy, with 1 page added at the front in his club's handwriting. A rope only tells you it is too short at the moment you cannot climb back up it, he used to tell his students. So what did the rope tell him at 70 meters? The truth. 2 weeks late. On July 2nd, 2026, Katrin Moser walked through the cold gate of Eisriesenwelt, the longest ice cave on Earth, 40 kilometers of passage in the Tennengebirge above Werfen, floored for its first kilometer in ancient ice. The cave exhales freezing air all summer. That draft is the only reason the ice is there. She was surveying with 2 colleagues on an 8-hour plan. Measure the ice floor, mark the melt line, and be out before the last cable car. Katrin was 50 years old, a glaciologist from Salzburg who had worked the Tennengebirge for 24 years and logged 600 surveys in this cave alone, the one who knew its ice by name, and the one who read the weather before she read the map. Her habit was the dawn reading. Every survey morning she checked the valley temperature before she checked anything else, because ice, she told her students, is a floor made of weather. That morning the valley read 19 degrees at 6 a.m., the warmest reading of the summer. What she didn't know, 3 warm nights in a row had put more water through the ice than any single warm day ever could. Here is what you need to understand about a cave ice floor. It is not rock, and it does not fail like rock. It thins from underneath, where meltwater runs between the ice and the stone, and the surface stays perfect and white until the moment it is a lid over nothing. A surveyor trusts the floor she measured last week. The cave only honors the floor that is there today. The survey ran well, crampons biting blue ice, the laser clicking off distances, breath hanging in 3 headlamp beams. Nothing went wrong on the way in, because the way in crossed the thick ice near the entrance. They reached the far ice chamber at 11, on schedule, an hour of walking from daylight. What they didn't know, under the smooth white floor they were standing on, the meltwater had opened a void the size of a room. At the far chamber, that is when the reading failed her, because Katrin put her boot down on ice she had measured at 80 centimeters in June and heard it answer wrong. A hollow note. Not the dead thud of ice on rock, but a drum. What her colleagues knew, already 20 meters out onto that floor with the laser, nothing at all. The ice under them looked exactly like the ice behind them. She crouched and put her glove flat on the surface. Cold, wet, and faintly moving, water running somewhere underneath it, close enough to feel through the ice. Panic lives in a floor that drums. She called them back. The ice cracked. Then it failed. 2 cavers fell. Because this is the arithmetic of a cave ice collapse. The drop was 4 meters onto rock and broken ice, and the water down there ran at 1 degree. A wet caver in 1 degree water has perhaps 30 minutes before the shivering stops and the trouble starts. Daylight was an hour away. The rescue was 4 hours away. One of them was standing in the meltwater channel with a broken forearm. The other was above the water on a shelf of collapsed ice, conscious and not moving properly. Watch a glaciologist do the hardest right things on a floor that just proved it lies. First, she did not walk out onto it. She lay down flat and spread her weight across the ice on her belly, the way the lake rescues teach it. Second, she took the 2 survey ropes she had brought for measuring and turned them into a rescue, threading one down to the man in the water while she anchored on a rock spur at the chamber wall. Put yourself on that ice for 1 minute of it. A white floor that sounds hollow under your ear, 2 friends 4 meters down in the cold, and the knowledge that the way you crawl out is the same way you crawled in. She got the broken arm out of the water first, hauling on a rope she had never rigged for a body, and put every dry layer the 3 of them owned onto him. Then she crawled the whole hour back to daylight alone, on her belly across the thin ice, and on her feet across the thick, and reached the cable car station at 1:20. The Salzburg Cave Rescue reached the ice chamber 4 hours and 10 minutes after the floor opened. Both casualties came out alive, hypothermic, one with a broken forearm and one with 2 cracked vertebrae. On stretchers hauled over plywood, the rescue team laid across the ice. The report recorded an ice floor collapse after 3 consecutive warm nights. 2 casualties recovered, 4 hours 10 minutes to rescue, and nobody died. The park adopted one rule that autumn. After any night above 15 degrees in the valley, the ice sections close until a team sounds the floor. The longest ice cave on Earth still breathes its freezing draft out over Werfen every summer, still rebuilds its floor every winter out of the same water that takes it away.
Katrin still surveys it, and she still takes the valley temperature before she takes anything else. Ice is a floor made of weather, she still tells her students. So what was under the white floor that July? 3 warm nights. The cave had been telling her for a week, in a language she had spent 9 years learning to read.